Let's just entertain the idea for a moment that Kenari, as shown in Andor Season 1, was a colony mining the mineral needed for the first Death Star. You know what? Let's just get into that. I was actually planning a whole other video about Cassian Andor and the Death Star. I'll do that at another time. But you all deserve an explanation as to why I think Kenari was a mining colony for minerals needed for the first Death Star. And it's all pretty much explained in Andor Season 2. Not outright. It isn't spoon-fed to us, but it's there. And it's so blaringly obvious when you notice it. In my last video, I touched on the subject lightly when I mentioned that Cassian Andor and his sister's parents were possibly killed by the Republic during the first year of the Clone Wars. Yes, there was a mining accident. That can't be denied. However, the mining accident wouldn't have killed every adult on Kenari, with the children largely left untouched. This may be a longer video than usual, so let's get into it. Look at your screen. See that little button that says subscribe? Touch it. See how it changes color and says subscribed? Awesome, isn't it? Now, don't touch it again. Not until I say something that makes you angry. In that case, I understand if you want to go. I'm not here to be the biggest Star Wars YouTube channel around, but I would like to get to 50,000 subscribers. Why 50,000? I don't know. It seems like a cool number. That's all. There's a lot to go over in this video, and yes, it's all about Andor. I can't help it. Andor has been the best Star Wars to come out in a long time, and it's been the best Star Wars series ever. Seriously, Andor set the bar really high for future Star Wars shows and movies. Okay, so in my last video, I talked about what may have happened to Cassian Andor's sister. In that, I talked about Kenari, as seen in Cassian Andor's flashbacks in Andor Season 1. But Andor Season 2 also gives us clues as to why I believe Kenari was being mined for minerals needed to build the first Death Star. And it all stems from the Gorman arc and the Gorman massacre in Andor Season 2. Yes, Gorman is tied to Kenari, even if just loosely. When we see Cassian Andor as a child, it's roughly 21 BBY, and Cassian Andor is around 11 to 12 years old. In 21 BBY, the Clone Wars is about a year into its battles. That's a year after Count Dooku takes the Death Star plans from Geonosis to Darth Sidious, or Chancellor Palpatine if you prefer. That's a year they have had to figure out what they will need to build the Death Star. With that comes the minerals needed to build the hull, or shell, if you prefer that. Massive amounts of minerals. On Kenari, we see a massive quarry where the planet has been stripped of resources. It kind of reminds me of the strip mines of southeastern Kentucky and West Virginia. Yes, I've seen them. My grandmother was from that area and used to take us camping in that same vicinity. Anyway, back to it. Kenari has massive holes where a mineral has been mined. We were told that there was a mining accident and all adults were killed. At least that's what we're led to believe. But it doesn't add up. Not completely. There are children still around, left as survivors of whatever happened. Small children. If all the adults were working in the mines, who was taking care of these small children? Yes, there are teens there now helping with survival and leading the pack of latchkey kids, but this is likely out of necessity. While there may have been a mining accident, and there likely was, a small one at least, these children would not have been left entirely alone while the parents went off to the mines. We can speculate that the people of Kenari were even slaves, but there's no sign of that, so I won't go too much into that idea. We don't see anything pointing to it in Andor Season 1 or Season 2, so let's disregard that for now. But we also don't see signs of a mining accident in the flashback scenes of Cassian Andor as a child in Andor Season 1. The machinery is largely intact, with one toppled machine is about it. The crater itself looks man-made and not geological. These weren't mines like the Seven Dwarves worked in. These are strip mines, at least what we are shown in Andor Season 1. If this were a mining accident that killed every adult, this mine would have a much different appearance. Someone was running the machinery, yet it's intact. Someone would have been operating the vehicles at the bottom of the quarry, yet they appear to be in good shape. How did those adults die? If it was a poison released, it would have killed the kids too, and Cassian wouldn't be able to stand on the rim of the crater. Remember, this is just a year after the Death Star plans were delivered to Darth Sidious, aka Palpatine. Marva Andor even rebukes the claim that the planet is poisonous when she takes off her oxygen mask. So, the Empire, or rather the Republic, lied to the galaxy to keep them away from Kenari, to hide their secret. In Andor Season 2, it is explained that the people of Gorman must be dealt with prior to the mining of calcite. Why? Wouldn't it have made more sense to keep the Gor happy so they could be used as cheap labor? They also explained that mining this much calcite would virtually destroy the planet and its inhabitants. But why the need to dispose of the population or a portion of it prior to mining? Because the Empire had been burned by a population when it was still called the Republic. Gorman is an explanation of what happened on Kenari. Kenari was found to contain the calcite needed for the first Death Star. They used the indigenous population to mine it. The workers rose up either because of the harsh working conditions, feeling the ground becoming unstable, or figuring out what the calcite was for. The last one is largely probably less likely. The Death Star remained a secret even among Imperial ranks for about 22 years. That includes 3 years of the Clone Wars under the Republic, so I doubt any mining workers were capable of figuring it out. And my timeline includes 3 years of the Clone Wars under the Republic. So what actually may have happened leading up to Andor and Kenari is this. The indigenous workers and miners of Kenari were put through brutal conditions. They were also seeing little in the way of prosperity as the Republic had promised. They were living in poor conditions, as seen in Andor Season 1 by the way the children were living. Had they been living in adequate housing, we would likely see some remnant of that, as mining camps were usually close to the mines themselves in our own history and present day. Yes, the kids could have abandoned their homes in fear that the Republic would come back and find them, but there is no sign of the Republic from what we see in Andor. But the workers rebelled. They fought back against the Republic and were killed for it, along with their families. The remaining children we see are the ones who took to the wilderness and got caught, and with the lack of proper census, the children were missed by the Republic. Hence a reason why we see a census being taken on Mina Rau. No, the Empire wasn't mining Mina Rau, but there was an awful lot of other resources the Empire would need, and they would need to be sure every person was accounted for prior to taking the crops and forcing the population to labor tirelessly, or wipe them out too. Another scenario is that the Republic could have wiped out the population once all the calcite was mined for the first Death Star. The people of Kenari rose up and were systematically killed, but by this time the Republic had enough of the minerals needed to build the first Death Star. They abandoned the planet and didn't know there were children left. When the Republic arrives back on Kenari to remove the Separatist ship that crash landed, they discovered curious children and wiped them out as well. If the Republic had not killed the adults, the leader of the children wouldn't have been so cautious about being discovered when the Separatist ship was falling from the sky, as we see in Andor Season 1. These kids had witnessed the murder of their parents and saw who did it. Now they're careful of people coming to their planet. What we see in Andor Season 2 is the plans for how the Empire planned to dispose of the population and mine Gorman dry. They use this idea because they know what happened to Kenari. So we get an explanation of what happened on Kenari through the Gorman massacre. I wouldn't say it's foreshadowing because Gorman happened after Kenari, but it's a way of hiding an explanation of Kenari in plain sight. The calcite needed from Gorman was for the second Death Star, a bigger Death Star, 25% bigger, one that would take all the calcite Gorman had to offer, while Kenari was strip mined for the calcite needed for the smaller first Death Star, and the planet wasn't destroyed due to that reason alone. Remember, the time of the Gorman massacre, the first Death Star's construction was nearly completed. All the components were finished. They just needed Galen Erso to complete the main focus laser. But, that was long-winded. Sorry about that. That's my explanation as to what happened on Kenari. For me, it's all right there in Andor Season 2 with the Gorman Massacre and Gorman mining. They explained Kenari through Gorman. But let me know what you think of this explanation and what you thought of Andor Season 1 and Andor Season 2. All opinions are welcome on this topic and anything related to Star Wars without any judgment. I do read all the comments and reply to as many as I can as long as time permits. Also, tap that subscribe button if you enjoyed my content and give the video a big stupid thumbs up. Doing so really does help my small channel get seen by more Star Wars fans, and the YouTube algorithm also likes it for some reason. Until the next time, may the Force be with you, especially if you drive a Ford Pinto. You need all the help you can get.